The NFL regular season is wrapping up, but there's still time to get in on the action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That's $150 in bonus bets, win or lose. The app is so easy to use, and there are so many different ways to bet, like live same-game parlays. Find bets in the new Explore tab. Make a parlay in the Parlay Hub, the best way to find popular parlays, and more. So visit FanDuel.com/247 and make your first bet a layup. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL.
Must be 21 plus and present in Arizona, Colorado, Connecticut, Iowa, Illinois, Indiana, Kansas, Kentucky, Louisiana, permitted parishes only, Massachusetts, Maryland, Michigan, New Jersey, New York, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Tennessee, Virginia, West Virginia, or Wyoming. FanDuel is offering online sports wagering in Kansas under an agreement with Kansas Star Casino, LLC. First online real money wager only. $10 first deposit required. Bonus issued as non-withdrawable bonus bets that expire 7 days after receipt. Restrictions apply. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit fanduel.com/RG in Colorado, Iowa, Michigan, New Jersey, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Illinois, Kentucky, Tennessee, and Virginia. Call 1-800-NEXT-STEP or text NEXT-STEP to 53342 in Arizona, 1-888-789-7777, or visit ccpg.org/chat in Connecticut, 1-800-9-WITH-IT in Indiana, 1-800-522-4700, or visit ksgamblinghelp.com in Kansas, 1-877-770-STOP in Louisiana. Visit mdgamblinghelp.org in Maryland. Visit 1-800-GAMBLER.net in West Virginia, or call 1-800-522-4700 in Wyoming. Hope is here. Visit gamblinghelplinema.org or call 800-327-5050 for 24/7 support in Massachusetts, or call 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY in New York, or visit oasas.ny.gov/gambling. Standard text messaging rates apply. Sports betting is void in Georgia, Hawaii, Utah, and other states where prohibited.
I'm Tim Fitzgerald at GoPowerCat.com.
And I'm Scott Chasen with Fog.net.
This is a replay of WIBW's TV show, The Drive.
Here's this week's episode on the 24/7 Sports Podcast Network.
Good evening, Wildcat and Jayhawk fans, and welcome to The Drive, sponsored by FlintHillsAuto.com. I'm Tim Fitzgerald of GoPowerCat.com, and the man to my right is Scott Chasen of Fog.net. And Scott, I promise this jacket was brown, and now it's olive green.
We really should have made this our poll question. We've had a huge debate going on in here if it's brown, if it's green. I think it's Master. It's like you won the Masters. Congratulations.
Let's be honest. This jacket and shirt don't match when it's brown, and now when it's olive green, it's really awful. Good news for you is you can interact with us on social media at facebook.com/The Drive Show, on Twitter at The Drive 13, and of course answer our weekly poll question and make your game predictions at thedriveshow.com. And remember, if you ever miss an episode of The Drive, don't fret. You can listen to an audio-only version that will appear each Monday morning in the form of a podcast at both GoPowerCat.com and Fog.net. We start things off with our 2-minute drill, and the 2-minute drill is sponsored by Hula Hands. They've been expecting you for quite a while now. Now let's eat. Well, Kansas defeated Texas Tech to finish the Big 12 regular season at 17-1. Scott, Chris Beard called the Jayhawks the best Kansas team he's ever seen. What's your take on that?
Well, my first take is he's only been there a few years, because there have been some very good Kansas
teams. Been some better ones.
Yeah, look, in my time covering the Jayhawks, which has been about 6 basketball seasons, yes, this is the best Kansas team top to bottom I've seen. In my time watching college basketball, it's hard to do better than that 2008 Kansas team, and the reason why is it was largely formed in a way that teams aren't formed anymore. Guys now go pro if they're a projected back-end first-round pick or even second-round pick sometimes, or they'll transfer. Those numbers are increasing, especially if it becomes easier to do so. So you look back at that 08 team, you have Mario Chalmers. He played in the NBA. He's an NBA champion. Brandon Rush, he played in the NBA. I believe he got an NBA championship with the Warriors. Sasha Khan was starting for that team. He got a championship with the Cavaliers. Darrell Arthur survived in the NBA a long time. Sharon Collins coming off the bench. Cole Aldrich, an NBA draft pick. Darnell Jackson, a long professional basketball career. Russell Robinson, a professional basketball career. So that team doesn't happen today because those guys are going pro, earlier and earlier in their career. But I look at this KU team, and it's punctuated by the Big 12 awards that came out today. You have the conference's Player of the Year in Udoka Azubuike. You have the Defensive Player of the Year in Marcus Garrett. You have another guy who is a unanimous first-team All-Big 12 selection in Devon Dotson. You have an all-freshman team member in Christian Brown. I mean, this roster from Kansas is stacked. It's quality depth. It's not necessarily depth, but it's quality depth. It's 7 guys who know what they're doing. Ochai Agbaji was an honorable mention All-Big 12 selection, and he's like the 5th guy to get honored. That doesn't even talk about Isaiah Moss, a graduate transfer, a 40% three-point shooter last year. He's about 35% this year. It's just a stacked roster, and so I think that's why you see Chris Beard say something like that.
Well, it certainly was one of the more dominant teams. They kind of cruised through this league. They got off the mat from losing Baylor early in the season and then just started rolling. And I'm going to be honest here, I think a lot of that was because the conference stinks. Down below Baylor, which is 8 teams down there out of 10, the conference isn't very good.
Yeah, how crazy. 2 teams win more than half their games. Who would have thought that?
It is nuts. It's just amazing how that everyone below the second place was at best at 500 in league play.
Let me workshop this real quick. The Big 12, 1 true champion, 8 true teams of mediocrity. Does that?
Sounds good. And Baylor.
And Baylor. K-State closed out its regular season with a 79-63 victory over Iowa State. Xavier Sneed scoring a career-high 31 points in his final home game. Fitz, does this ease the pain from the season at all?
Well, first of all, that is correct. That was a victory. I'm going to talk about a victory now. No, it doesn't. It's a nice way to go out, and X went out in style. It was a really dominant performance against a very depleted Iowa State team that honestly was really bad. Was disinterested in the game. Pearson McAtee got his first career start, had a career high in points, and honestly, it might have been given the senior his chance to start, but the team was better when Pearson McAtee was on the court. And granted, this game, there were some favorable matchups where guys he could cover, but Pearson's kind of a glue guy. He moves the ball, he distributes it, he started the game off with a backdoor dunk, something we really haven't seen from K-State this year. And meanwhile, Xavier Sneed shot the lights out. He had surpassed his career high by halftime. And for some reason, he only played 15 minutes in the first half, and none of us could quite understand. Coach Weber was acting like at one point he had foul trouble when he only had 1 foul. Look, this K-State team looked relaxed and good, and these are the things that happen when, you know what happens, Scott? You make shots. Everything in basketball is easier when you make shots, and K-State was making lots of shots against the Cyclones, and meanwhile playing pretty good defense against that team. This looked like a K-State team that we kind of thought maybe we'd see more often this season. They really played well together. And I'm going to be blunt here. When Xavier Sneed shoots the ball that well and a guy like Pearson McAtee ties it all together, things look better. Sometimes basketball isn't about who jumps the highest or runs the fastest. It's about the guy who understands the game and makes those around him better. And I thought Pearson had a significant impact in the game. And that's not to say he can do that in every game, Scott. There's going to be some games where physically he just can't match up. But when he can, get him on the floor because he makes the other 4 guys better.
I'm going to offer a thought real quick on Xavier Sneed, just his career with Kansas State.
Well, I was really happy he went out this way. Kissed the Power Cat, win by almost 20. It was just unfortunate his senior season was so bad. It just was really unfortunate. He played a role in that with inconsistent playing. But he came out, and Scott, he looked confident. He looked, I'm going to shoot the ball. And he had that look in his eye, I'm going to shoot the ball, I'm going to make the ball. And there's a difference. Guys come out and shoot, and other guys come out and they think it's going to go in every time, and you really haven't seen that from Xavier until yesterday.
Really a phenomenal game. Well, for years, the Big 12 was praised for its balance, but this year, like we talked about, the conference is top-heavy with Baylor and Kansas at the top. So, Fitz, does this help or hurt the national profile of the Big 12? Might have 2 #1 seats.
Yeah, it does. It helps from that standpoint. It helps in another way. I was watching ESPN Plus. That's right. Somebody was watching ESPN Plus, West Virginia game, and they were talking about West Virginia being the 3rd or 4th best defensive team in the nation. Kansas 1, I think West Virginia 3, Baylor 4. Top 3 of the top 4 are Big 12 teams. And for national critics or analysts, they're thinking, that's really good defense. I got news for everyone. they're good on defense because most of the teams in this league are really bad on offense. They don't look at around these rosters. There's no real go-to guys that can fill it up. I mean, you had guys that are playing in the NBA that were in the lower half of this conference on their teams. There's nobody in this league really filling it up at the bottom half of this conference. There's some good players. Desmond Bain's good, but he's not someone that you're frightened of on offense. I just think this conference stinks for the most part. But the good news is, people, everyone around the nation thinks it's awesome because KU's very good and Baylor's pretty darn good, and they have incredible records.
Yeah, one distinction, the only team I can think of just right now that maybe has that firepower would be Oklahoma. But to your point, they've got two big men, new age shooting big men in Doolittle and Manick. And how inconsistent do those guys play? How many times have there been games where, Doolittle maybe a little bit less inconsistent? He had a great year, but where you just wonder, hey, how is this guy scoring 6 points on 12 shots? He should be one of the best scorers in the conference. I think it's hurt it from the perspective of I think teams or people around the nation don't take the Big 12 seriously after about 4 teams. Now, West Virginia having the reputation it does and Chris Beard having the reputation he does, that's going to help because even though those teams weren't great, people still look at them. But I say this, I don't think the Big 12 got its due when the conference was more balanced top to bottom. I actually think it's getting a little bit more credit now.
That's crazy.
Even though I think the conference is worse because there's no good teams basically after 2 or 3.
And honestly, in all fairness, it's hard for me to judge Kansas and Baylor against these teams. They might be incredibly good, or they might just be the prettiest person in the room. You just don't know. It's an interesting note here, though. Oklahoma was down by 20 at TCU in the final game of the regular season Big 12 play. If Oklahoma had lost, they'd been the 7th seed playing Kansas State on Wednesday night. If they won, and they did come back and win, they're the 3rd seed in the Big 12 tournament.
It tells you everything you need to know.
They moved 4 spots with one shot.
Yeah, it's unbelievable.
Now a quick look at your poll question results. And poll questions are brought to you by Film at 11. Your Go Fast, Look Good, Play Hard custom shop.
Well, last week's question was, Kansas has a 1-game lead in the Big 12 with 2 games to play. So will the Jayhawks win the title outright? They obviously did. They did so by 2 games. 80% of you got that one correct.
And what's 20% of you? What are you thinking? What were you thinking? This week's question is this. Will the Big 12 get 2 number 1 seeds, being Kansas and Baylor, in the NCAA? A is yes, B is no. Vote at thedriveshow.com.
Well, that will do it for this half of the 2-minute drill, but we will be right back with more on KU and K-State on The Drive.
Imagine the softest sheets you've ever felt. Now imagine them getting even softer over time. I'm here to tell you about Boll & Branch and how you can discover this new level of softness with their iconic sheets. In a recent customer survey, 96% responded that Boll & Branch sheets get softer with every wash. They source the rarest 100% organic cotton for an incredible softness to start. Then they skip the toxins and harsh chemicals for a natural feel unlike anything else, and it all comes together with their signature weave. This special design feels buttery, breathable, and unlocks new levels of softness with every wash, and they stand behind their promise of softness. With their 30-night guarantee, you can wash, style, and sleep in their sheets for an entire month. If during the 30 nights, you don't love your sheets or feel them getting softer and softer, you can send them right back. No questions asked. So head to bollandbranch.com for 15% off your first order with code Odyssey. That's BOLL and branch.com. Exclusions apply. See site for details.
Welcome back to The Drive as we continue our weekly 2-minute drill. The 2-minute drill is sponsored by Hula Hands. They've been expecting you. Now let's eat. ESPN's Joe Lunardi, who knows everything, went on television yesterday and said he considers the Jayhawks a lock as the number 1 overall seed in March Madness. Scott, what is the NCAA tournament outlook for this team?
Yeah, I'll say this. In terms of locks and being that number 1 overall seed, I personally believe Kansas could go out and lose by 50 in the first game of the Big 12 tournament, and they have locked this thing up. Yeah, you're right. They won't do that most likely, but this is a team that is 28-3 on the year, has not lost a game since early January, has not lost a game at full strength this year. They did not, Kansas didn't have Isaiah Moss in the game against Duke, which was the season opener, and Madison Square Garden. Marcus Garrett doesn't play the second half against Villanova with an ankle injury, and even so, they're up by 4 with 2 minutes left in a true road game with the ball, I might add. And then obviously that Baylor game, Devon Dotson first half gets a hip pointer that causes him to miss the next game. He doesn't even play at Oklahoma, and he missed 10 minutes in that second half. Now, injuries are part of it, not making excuses and saying Kansas should be undefeated, because it's very, very, very hard to go undefeated in college basketball. I mean, San Diego State has learned that just about. Gonzaga is going to drop games every year. No matter your schedule, you're going to lose games. This Kansas team has separated itself a couple of ways. One, defensively, Kansas has been 1, 2, or 3 defensively in KenPom all year, depending on the metric you look at. They're right up there. I think Virginia is right now neck and neck with them on KenPom in particular. But defensively, this is one of the best Kansas basketball teams, maybe the best basketball team on that end that Bill Self has ever had. Offensively, they're improving. It's not as pretty as, say, the Final Four team with Devontae Graham and Frank Mason and those guys. But what you have to remember is KU's 2-point efficiency, when you have Devon Dotson, a 60% shooter at the rim, Udoka Azubuike, an 85% shooter on layups and dunks, and 75% on the season. When you have those guys powering your offense, and then you have Marcus Garrett driving to the rim, that offense is actually very efficient. It's just not pretty because they're not bombing away from 3-point range. Ranks in the top 10 of KenPom too. So, like I said, this team has locked up a #1 overall seed, and now the question, do you want to go to Houston or do you want to go to Indianapolis?
I don't want to go to either, actually. I'd like to go to Maui.
Okay.
I think I'll be doing the rest of the drive this season from Maui. I'll talk to the boss after the show.
Yeah, I don't think they have a regional there, but real quick on the point of those two, it's a big debate right now going on, at least among the fan base. Which will they choose? Indianapolis closer in mileage, right next to Chicago, a lot of KU alums there. Dallas is right by Houston, obviously it's a few hours away. A lot of KU alums in Dallas too, and Houston a little bit farther. Maybe you avoid some of those teams in the Midwest though.
Right, I think KU could run the table this year, and the reason is, I mentioned the Big 12 not being good. I don't think college basketball is that good this season, Scott. I just think there's a lot of watered-down teams right now. And in March, you've got to have good guard play, and boy, I like Kansas's guards. And if you got that rare thing, that rim protector that can score, and KU has it, it makes you pretty special, and it's going to be really interesting to see how far they run. Yeah,
how many teams in the nation have one who can do one, they can score, or maybe they protect the rim, but liability on offense, Udoka Azubuike can certainly do both.
Yep.
Well, basketball will soon be over, mercifully for K-State, and spring football is right around the corner for the Wildcats. So, Fitz, what are the big storylines as the Wildcats prepare for Chris Kleiman's second season?
Well, it's really interesting. They have to rebuild that offensive line, and at first glance, when you think about replacing an offensive line that was loaded with seniors, that seems like a mighty task, and finding all the right pieces along that offensive line is challenging for Connor Riley and the rest of the coaches. But the good news is they've got some nice pieces. And the really good news is they've got guys that really kind of fit what Connor Riley wants to do offensively with his line, maybe a little bit better than a bunch of guys who were built for a different system. And that's really the only area for Kansas State that didn't quite fit what this system, these coaches want to do. The other position they need to rebuild is the running back spot, and they've got some young guys there, Jacardia Wright and Joe Irvin to go with Harry Trotter. It's a really interesting, intriguing spot. And honestly, though, I think one of the things that they really have to milk along is getting Skylar Thompson better at reading defenses and identifying where to put the ball, and getting him even more comfortable and confident in the pocket, because he still relies on some bad habits that really break down the offense. Defensively, they've got to find guys along that front that can really play a physical game to go with Wyatt Hubert. They've got 2 great senior linebackers with Elijah Sullivan and Justin, oh my gosh, I just forgot his name. Justin Hughes comes back for his senior season after injuring his knee. And then they've always got to find depth in the defensive secondary. If you don't have enough guys in the back end of your defense in the Big 12, you're in trouble.
Yeah, let me ask you this. When you succeed in year one, when you overshoot expectations, they always get raised, I would argue, unfairly in year 2. Where is the bar going to be set for Chris Kleiman?
That's a great question. When you win 8 games, everyone thinks you're going to win 9. And this is going to be a little bit retooling. we'll see how they do. They've got a very intriguing schedule this year, and we'll see if they can match that 8. I think matching the 8 would be a great accomplishment.
Yeah, eight wins in back-to-back years. I mean, fans in Lawrence would tell you, that gets you a statue put outside your stadium. It's a little different other places.
Scott, I just interviewed Justin Hughes. Why can't I remember names anymore, Scott?
I give you credit. That was the most complete football breakdown you will get in the spring. That was unbelievable.
The guy I most recently talked to, I forget his name. Man, getting old's not fun. Now we're going to step out of bounds. We're going to do it. This week, the University of Kansas provided its response to the NCAA's allegations of rules violations. Scott, summarize it. How KU handled its response. It was like 300 pages. You got 2 minutes.
Yeah, it was more than 300 pages. I read through it, and it was, first of all, a great way to spend an evening. It's hard to buckle this down, but there are kind of 4 points at the center of this. So the first is the definition of what is a booster. The NCAA is alleging that Adidas executives, consultants were meddling in recruitments of KU players. Now, what's interesting is a lot of these players never actually played for Kansas. You have Billy Preston, who never played a minute, DeAndre Ayton, who obviously went to Arizona, Zion Williamson, who went to Duke, and then you have Silvio De Sousa, who played obviously in his freshman season, but hasn't really played much since. So the question is being asked, the role that those with Adidas had in those recruitments, and was it Kansas's responsibility to monitor them? Kansas is saying, hey, these guys aren't boosters. They are not bound the same way. And Kansas is really attacking the system of the NCAA and saying, if you want to legislate this and you want to say every member of a sponsored, a brand, every member of that brand is going to be a booster, then you are going to completely alter the course of college basketball. You're going to change how every team has to basically enforce its rules, and you're going to destroy the AAU system. There will be unintended consequences. So that's the big picture point from Kansas. They're also arguing definitions, whether someone like Larry Brown is still a representative of Kansas, even though he hasn't coached there in 30 years. That's kind of a sticking point. They are accepting the football violations. They said largely, hey, that was the previous regime. And even the Les Miles one, hey, that was self-reported. So I think those are kind of a less of a sticking point. The last piece of it is compliance, and they're making the argument that Bill Self, Curtis Townsend, and KU have followed compliance rules. It's 300 pages. It's impossible to boil it down. We'll see what happens. The NCAA has 2 months to respond, and then it'll go back and forth again.
It was aggressive, though.
It was very aggressive.
They came back in an aggressive manner,
Yeah.
and I think from a legal standpoint, that was probably their best course of action.
I think it was their only course of action, I would say, because they disputed every single basketball charge, every single one of them, and they kind of had to with the position they were in.
It was very interesting.
Well, now let's hear from the fans, and our fan question this week is a simple one. Hey, when are the spring football games scheduled for K-State and KU? And that's from Jacqueline in Topeka, Kansas State.
There is none. There's not a spring game this year. They have not. They've decided to do an open practice on Friday, April 17th on the evening. Fans are welcome to come to an open practice, but there is no game.
April 18th for KU. Last time they had a concert afterward. Don't know if they'll do it again, but probably so.
I'll come sing.
Well, remember to ask us your questions on our Facebook page and on Twitter at The Drive 13. And when we return, we will look at our predictions here on The Drive.
With Blue Link Plus, you can access your Hyundai Tucson Limited remotely. Doors unlocked, temperature set, lost car found.
There it is.
Get complimentary class-leading Blue Link Plus. Call 562-314-4603 for complete details.
Welcome back as we head down the home stretch of this week's show. Now it's time to take a look at our predictions. The predictions are brought to you by Vanderbilt's, your work boot center. And remember to make your weekly predictions at thedriveshow.com. Here are last week's results, and I'm not happy.
Yeah.
The fans are beginning to run away from us, and the fact
TCU
that our
meltdown.
viewers are so obviously more intelligent than us says a lot about us.
Yeah, we've done a great job informing them.
You got it. Now this week's picks start with Oklahoma versus West Virginia. This game's on Thursday. Look, folks, you got to get your votes in. The voting will be closed midweek. It's a pick 'em. It's a 3-6 game. It could have been 3-6 the other way just as easily. I'm going to go with Oklahoma.
Yeah, Oklahoma beat West Virginia twice handily. Give me West Virginia because they're due just to do something right.
I don't understand this game at all. I have no grasp of this game.
All right, next is TCU -2.5 versus K-State. I will take the Horned Frogs to bounce back after what I am dubbing the Senior Day debacle.
You know what? I'm sliding in the standings. I'm going to pick the Cats to cover that 2.5 points or win. Or win. The final game, of course, is Kansas -9.5 versus the Iowa State-Oklahoma State winner, probably Oklahoma State. Will KU win by 10 or more points?
I'll take Kansas, but I feel not so great about that if Oklahoma State wins.
I'll take Kansas, too. Again, make your picks over at thedriveshow.com. Now it's time for our On the Clock segment. On the Clock is sponsored by Carpet One. Buy local for a strong local community, and we start with Scott Chasen.
Well, look, the Big 12 awards as voted on by the coaches came out, and there were some small things that I probably had a problem with, like Marcus Garrett being third team All Big 12, despite leading the conference in assists, having the best assist-to-turnover ratio of the top 80 assist getters in the conference, Owen being the Defensive Player of the Year. But Bill Self, to me, would have been the Coach of the Year over Scott Drew. Baylor was picked second in the Big 12, went 15-3, an absolutely fantastic year, fantastic record for the Bears. But they were picked second, they finished second. Kansas is always going to be picked to finish first in the league, but to go 17-1, to not slip up. I mean, Baylor learned how hard it is not to do that when they lost to TCU, to be as dominant as they were over the course of the season. To me, I would have gone with Bill Self for that one.
Well, this season is almost over, Kansas State basketball fans. Be thankful. I think they're going to win a game in Kansas City, then it'll be over. And then it'll be off to the NCAA tournament where we can all fill out brackets and not pick our Cats to win or lose. That's really the end of the whole show right there. That's it for this week's edition of The Drive. We will see you next week right here and all week on social media.
This is Sandra Herrera from Attacking Third, a podcast part of the CBS Sports Golazo Network dedicated to all things women's soccer. With the NWSL expanding to 14 teams, the 2024 season promises to be bigger and better than ever, and Attacking Third will be along for the ride from start to finish. Before that, though, we'll be all over the CONCACAF W Gold Cup, where the U.S. women's national team is looking to clinch silverware on home soil. We'll also be keeping tabs on the winter transfer window, the Women's Super League, the UEFA Women's Champions League, and elsewhere. Coming to you multiple times a week with game previews, recaps, analysis, breaking news, exclusive interviews, and more. Attacking Third is your one-stop shop for the best coverage of the women's game. Download, follow on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and anywhere podcasts are found. Make sure you subscribe to Attacking Third.